Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
What's up, everybody? I'm Luke Lewis, the host of the Lukewarm Games Podcast, a weekly podcast devoted to video games and pop culture and our unique perspectives surrounding them. I'm super excited to be talking about one of my favorite games on this episode of Side Quests. Today, I'll be talking about Concrete Genie, which was one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 4 generation, and I feel like it's incredibly underrated. I don't feel like a lot of people talk about this game, and I feel like it's incredibly special. It was released in 2019 and developed by Pixelopus, and just to give like a brief kind of summary of what the game is for those that are unfamiliar, it is an action-adventure game, and it is just such a magical experience. The game centers on a character named Ash. He is a young boy who visits the seaside town of Danska after the town has been polluted by this dark presence, very ominous. And then over the course of the story, Ash acquires a magical paintbrush that grants him the power to create art and bring light back to the town of Danska. So the whole game has this really cool hand-drawn art style, and it's just very whimsical. The best way I can describe the game is it's a warm cup of tea on a cold night, and it just has this incredible storybook-like atmosphere. But the big hook of the game comes from the magical paintbrush that Ash gets in the game, and that creates the main mechanic where you in the game get to use your magical paintbrush to create art to bring light back to this world of darkness. And you get to use the touchpad on the DualShock 4 to paint and shape and size your artwork in the game. And it's just one of the most visually stunning games I think I've ever played. And you have such unity over the world because you're the one creating art. So there are a lot of puzzles within the game where you have to draw and paint on a given surface to then create light, create this warmth, and bring life back to the town of Danska. And where this art also comes into play is that Ash uses it to create genies, which are these anthropomorphic creatures that really resemble something that like I would have tried to draw as a child. Just wacky colors and fun shapes and sizes and just a really fun energy to the game. So after Ash creates these creatures called genies, they become almost kind of, it reminds me a lot of Shadow of the Colossus or The Last Guardian, where you're befriending this creature and then they help you throughout your journey. So that's a big mechanic in this game is Ash will create art and then the genies will be summoned to help him solve environmental puzzles. It just keeps the game really interesting, and I always felt inclined to continue exploring. On top of that, like I mentioned, it's just the pure vibe of the game is just so warm and cozy in the best way. And this is added through as you draw your art progressing through Ash's story. Ash keeps a journal that you can refer back to and actually see the artwork that you did. And without spoiling anything, when you finish the game, you're able to see all of the artwork that you created throughout the world and this true sense of light that you brought to the space. And it's just such a rewarding game. It's an incredibly short game. I want to say I beat it in less than 6 hours. If you're a fan of platinum trophies, it's a great one to go back to as well. A pretty quick, easy platinum, but really satisfying to find all those collectibles throughout the world as they lead to new types of art that you can draw. So, for example, you'll get grass effects and trees and plants and vines and stars and wonderful like winter and different weather effects that you can then use in your artwork. So if you've never heard or seen of this game, like please look up artwork from the game, please look up gameplay so you can see it in action, because as soon as I started playing it, I was immediately sold. I was blown away the second I was given control of Ash and his paintbrush. And on top of the art, there's also really satisfying traversal throughout the game. Ash traverses the world of Danska, and there are fun ways to navigate the world, action platform, and find these collectibles to enhance your artwork. And on top of all of this, there's a really well-told coming-of-age story about Ash overcoming some bullying that he's facing in his life and some, social anxiety that he's experiencing. And it's just a really poignant story, I would say, that, really focuses on Ash overcoming his fears, dealing with the bullies, and spreading positivity through his art. And it's just a really touching experience. This is a game that I feel like very, very few folks talk about, and I would love to see a sequel for this game because I just think the gameplay is so satisfying, and the systems that you use to create artwork are just, it's so intuitive. I didn't really touch on that specifically, but you can use the touchpad to quickly resize everything as you're drawing, and on paper, it sounds kind of like a strange game, but it just works so well, and it just made me so happy to play. And every moment I was creating art, exploring, finding these collectibles, traversing the world, building these relationships with the genies in the game that Ash had created. It just was a really, really special experience to me, and one that I'll never forget, and one that I'm quick to recommend if someone's looking for a unique gaming experience that they've never had before. Additionally, there is a mode where you can use PlayStation VR. Didn't get a chance to experience it as I don't own a PlayStation VR unit, but I imagine it would be a very fun thing to play if you do have a VR unit. Once again, the art and just visual direction of the game is so stunning that I can only imagine it would be a really fun one to experience in that setting. So that being said, please go check out Concrete Genie and let me know what you think of it. With that, if you want to hear more of my thoughts on video games, you can check out my podcast, the Lukewarm Games Podcast, streaming on all major podcasting platforms. And you can also follow me on Twitter at LukewarmLewis. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and happy gaming.
This March, get ready for 2 weeks of The Bat, 2 weeks of Vengeance, 2 weeks of The Dark Knight Fortnite.
So, I have a question. Have you ever wanted to get into comics, but you just didn't know where to start? Well, welcome to Comics Quest. I'm JD Martin, and every week I sit down with a guest to talk a comic that I think anybody can pick up and start their comics reading journey. We take a look at psychedelic sci-fi, fantastical action, heart-wrenching love stories, and of course, superheroes. So check us out at certainpov.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
CPOV.
certainpov.com.